Welcome to another episode of All Pop No Culture Presents The Guys Get Lost. This is our 8th episode. And in this episode, we're still in season 1. We're watching episode 19, which is titled Deus Ex Machina. Episode 20, which is Do No Harm. Episode 21, The Greater Good. And episode 22, Born to Run. This week, we're going to see all kinds of cool and crazy stuff. We get Locke's backstory. We see some pretty significant changes for Boone and Claire. We meet Jack's wife. We see Sawyer tame a savage beast. We find out Saeed did some work for the CIA before getting on the plane. We meet Kate's old boyfriend and see what that's all about. And then we get even more Hatch. So that gets interesting. Next week's episode will be the 3-part finale of season 1. So stay tuned for that. As always, if you haven't, make sure you like and subscribe. We hope you're digging the show. If you have any comments or anything you think we can be doing better, let us know. If there's anything we're doing great, let us know. And we'll keep working to get through. We've actually, by the time I post this, we're well into season 2 in our recordings. So we're cruising along. So we hope you enjoy this episode, and we'll catch you next week.
I'm assuming he's going to be back. I hope he's going.
He's lost.
That's what I'm trying to segue into. Oddly enough, because we got 4, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4 episodes to watch tonight, or talk about, because we already watched them. Yeah, it's I'm trying to like look things up on my phone and vamp at the same time, and I'm doing both of them fucking horribly, so I'm just gonna stop and let my little 45-year-old ADHD addled brain.
I'll start with.
Oh, there, Kevin's back. As soon as I pull my shit together,
You won't start anything. You just hold your fucking pants and deliver some medicine.
So Lost. I will tell you.
You hold your britches, sir.
I am
Jesus
a
Christ.
huge fan now of Lost. It's similar to Andrew, and how he is like on board and wanting to watch the last 3 episodes early, and I did not, but I'm so on board now. It's scary. I saw, Matthew, the actor, he shaved. I was happy to see that. Like, I'm happy to see like they're doing real things to show that they understand that, you need to start doing things to look like you've been on the island for this long and have appropriate amount of facial hair. So there's enough realism mixed in now to the oddity of being on an island for this long. That makes sense to me. It is completely intriguing, and I cannot wait to see how this fucking ends up, for sure.
Yeah. So they've been just for peace of mind, they've been on the island for about a month and a half at this point.
Yep.
So that's their timeline. And we do see them more and more doing things that are, in line with what you would have to do to survive, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And they will continue to do that. And some of that stuff, you just start to assume as part of everyday life. Like, you don't necessarily have to see every guy shave all the time to understand that now they have a way to shave, so we're good, right? We don't, like you said, we don't see them drinking water all the time every episode, but we know that they are, because they have a place where they go, to get water, right? So they have a stream, they have bottles, they're taking care of themselves. So we can accept the fact that they do this stuff all day, every day, right? So if we're gonna get into it, we should get into it. We kick off our 4-episode watch with episode 19 of season 1, called Deus Ex Machina. And we start off with John Locke in the past, and at least it starts off for just a minute. You can't tell if he's okay or not, crippled or whatever. And he's not. He's okay. So we know this is further back than whenever he had his injury. And we meet his mom, and she's a nutter, right? She's a little crazy.
Yeah.
And at one point, she tells him that he was immaculately conceived.
Yeah.
Which, as soon as you hear that, you're like, cool.
Well, no,
you're bonkers.
Yes, but at the same time, with what happened to Locke when he hit the island, and us not knowing what shadowy forces are at work, honestly, for me, when they first said it, I didn't want to say like I accepted it, but I did like go like, ooh,
Mhm.
like what like, ooh, what like, I'm all, this could be fucking horrible, but what fucking curveball are they throwing at me now? Like every time one of these goofy far outside things happens, like I was like, oh shit, that's crazy. Now this episode was interesting to me because it has so far been the only episode that I've been able to predict what was going to happen
In what way?
until the end.
Yeah.
With Locke's backstory, I knew like when he no, you continue and then I'll throw it in with what you're going, because you're kind of breaking down the episode for us. So
Okay, so in the past we've got Locke and his mom. In the current timeline, we've got Boone and Locke aggressively trying to break open the hatch.
one of my favorite exchanges between Locke and Boone is in this episode, and it's when they're trying to break open the hatch right there, and he's built a trebuchet, and Boone is just like, well, isn't that a catapult? And he's like, no, it's a trebuchet. And it's just one of those funny like nerd like facts that I know about from watching, not like, admittedly, the fucking Punkin' Chunkin' fucking series on Discovery that they update every like 3 or 4 years. You ever watch that around
Nope.
Thanksgiving? In the Midwest they call it Punkin' Chunkin', and people build these giant machines to see who can throw a pumpkin the farthest. And they've got like mechanical ones, they've got trebuchets, but I mean, people are putting like hundreds of thousands of dollars into this. It's insane. But the whole trebuchet thing versus a catapult, it's such a like nerd thing to know that a trebuchet isn't a catapult, even though they're used interchangeably. And when you look at them, just because of the mechanism from which they work, and for Locke to just be like, oh, it's a trebuchet. Well, I thought it was a catapult. No, it's a trebuchet. Because I don't know. That just tickled me because it was just such a nerd fucking moment that he like knew that. And it just, I love that exchange. There's something about these two together also that Locke feeds right into Boone's need for a father figure.
Right.
Yep.
Right. For
Like,
sure. For sure.
Boone
And he
feeds
has since
into,
they started going out to that hatch, right?
oh yeah.
well, Boone feeds into so many people's needs. I mean, every character Boone fits into what they're missing, really. It makes sense. Again, I don't know the series. All I know is I feel like Boone somehow is the main character in this whole series. But Boone, in every character, Boone's kind of the answer to what their needs are for the island, which is very interesting to me. It's delicious. The whole show is delicious.
Yeah. it's my favorite, so you don't have to convince me. So this one has some fun storylines too. Like you have Sawyer's headaches,
Oh,
which are a lot of fun. They get to have some fun with that. I love the bit where Jack's quizzing him and he asks him if he's ever had an STD or been with a prostitute.
When did the headaches start?
A few days ago, a week maybe. Do you have to be here?
Do you have them when you wake up in the morning?
Usually they hit me middle of the day. What the hell are you doing with that thing?
Checking to see how your pupils respond to changing stimuli.
What's that? That knot?
Would you just let him do his thing?
I'm letting him, but I want to know what the hell he thinks I should...
I think you should just shut up and relax.
What the hell are you doing?
Have you ever had a blood transfusion?
What? No.
Taken pills for malaria?
Nope.
Have you ever had sex with a prostitute?
What the hell's that got to do with anything?
Is that a yes?
Yes.
And have you ever contracted a sexually transmitted disease? I'm gonna take that as another yes. When was the last outbreak?
Go to hell, Doc.
I know he deserved it, but
He needs glasses.
And he doesn't need that information at all.
oh, that was
Just to
so
get him
funny.
to have to say it in front of Kate.
Yeah, you have myopia, and it's just Sawyer's take. Like,
yeah, he's like, oh my God, what? And
what's
he's like, yeah,
myopia?
you're farsighted. And
That was great.
and so the glasses that he builds, I love that. You know, and
Saeed.
it becomes a team thing. Like you see this moment where everybody's, you know, other than Locke and Boone, everybody's kind of working together. Saeed's breaking down these glasses and putting them together so that he's got the right glasses. And then as soon as he puts them on, Hurley walks by and makes some kind of crack at him. I forget what he says.
Dude, looks like someone steamrolled Harry Potter.
I think it
but,
literally
like,
just says like nice glasses, like it's or something like that.
something, or he calls him Harry Potter or something like that. He just
Oh
takes
yeah, that's what it was.
he takes a shot that, you know, nobody usually gets to get a shot in on Sawyer, right? Like he's the quick-witted one, you know, and so he gets knocked down a peg there.
Kevin,
it's yeah.
I want to ask you, and just say yes or no.
I probably won't, but go ahead.
I don't remember. I feel like it. I don't remember who was in the scene, but I feel like it was one of the scenes with the Koreans where I felt like I saw Hurley on the TV.
Yeah, that was in last week's episodes.
Yeah, that
so
was.
when you were
yeah.
watching last week, it was when Jin was coming in to beat the shit out of the guy. Or actually, it's the first time when he doesn't beat the guy up.
Right.
The guy's daughter is watching the TV, and there's Hurley winning the lottery. And it's actually the scene that we see where he's on the news right before his grandpa dies.
Gotcha. I didn't rewind to watch it enough to see, but all I remember is that's fucking Hurley, but I didn't know I didn't see the context. To me, it just looked like it was a TV show that he happened to be on, so I didn't see that it was him winning the lottery. But I was like, that's Hurley, and I said it out loud at the gym while I'm on the treadmill, and people looked at me like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" I'm like, "No, I'm just watching the show. Don't mind me."
Don't pay attention to me. That between
Nothing to see
so
here.
there's a
Elliptical
few of
arms.
those. So there's oddly enough, it's when Boone is in the police station to report the guy that he thinks is beating up Shannon.
Right.
You got Sawyer in the background. You've got Hurley in the background. So they're doing these little things to show that these worlds are one and the same. Right? Like these people were around each other in some form or fashion, and that they're tied together a little bit. Like you see them in these same locations. You got Sawyer with Jack's dad in the bar. Like these people are entwined in each other's lives in some way, even if it's away on the outskirts. Like they're all tied together.
Hmm.
So back to our episode. Locke has a dream about a plane crashing, and it seems like it's real, right? It seems like it's actually happening. It turns out it's a dream, that he's having. And we get the flash with a blood-soaked Boone, where he says the Teresa falls up the stairs, Teresa falls down the stairs, right? And it's this thing that only Boone should know, but it's coming to Locke in a dream, right? And so when he says that to Boone, Boone's like, he's like, you can't know that. I must have said something. And I think Boone or Locke even plays into it. He's like, maybe. He's like, I don't think so, but whatever. But that drives them to go after the plane, and they find, a body that seems like it's a priest, but he's got a gun on him. And, then they find the plane, and the plane's full of heroin.
By the way, for a plane crashing, there's a lot of goddamn guns like available to people, for a plane crash.
Yes, but and this is what I like that they've done with that, with all the firearms, and they're all accounted for now that we know of.
Yeah.
We all and there's like a. It's interesting because they're locked up, which is both good and bad. It's a very interesting situation with the guns that I have a feeling, as things start to happen, is gonna wind up biting them in the ass to some degree.
Well, that, and also I agree with you, and also all the heroin they just found too. Like the first thing I thought about when they found all the heroin, I'm like, well, fuck, that's not going to be a good thing for some people on that island. Like, listen, on an island like that, guns are either super important or their worst fucking enemy. Heroin doesn't even have the opportunity to be anything good but bad.
No, that's not necessarily true, and that was a comment that I made back when
Hurley was trying to kick it.
Yeah, when Charlie was trying to kick, and Locke took the dope and threw it into the fire. If Jack made a very small solution of heroin for someone as an injection, that would be a marvelous painkiller.
Like they could have used it for Boone at the end, right?
Exactly. Like that. That would have been. Boone was in so much pain. Charlie or Jack had nothing to treat the kind of pain that Boone was in well, we're jumping ahead on the episode. That heroin, actually, that find of that heroin in terms of like the healthcare of the people on the island, it is totally horrible for Charlie.
Right.
And it's also very interesting that the heroin smugglers are smuggling the heroin in like dime bag size.
Exactly.
Like, you're already getting busted for distribution. Like that like, was I thought that
ready.
I thought that was kind of a goofy one. I was like, but I'll take it, whatever. But that would have been bad for Charlie, but for the people on the island actually having that could be a definite plus in an emergency like that. That's it's a super good sedative like that. Like again, it's all about dosage and how you administer it.
Well, we don't know that they're not going to use it for good in the future. True. But yes, for Charlie, it's only bad. Bad. And he's just barely come out of it and become a regular person, really.
Yeah.
So
I have, okay.
We'll get there. Get there. Calm your shit. So in the past now, John hires a private investigator to find his mom. And the dude
find his dad.
Actually, no, it was to find his mom because he's trying to find information about it. And then he asks about his dad, and the PI is like, the PI is like, well, I have the information, but this never turns out good. Are you sure you want it? And so he says yes. And then, he tracks down his dad. They have a moment, and they have a good conversation, and he offers to take Locke hunting, and they go hunting together. And the next time Locke comes over, of course, he accidentally shows up an hour early to find his father getting dialysis. And so you get this idea that he's kind of getting played, right?
But at the same time, you well, we know he's getting played. I knew
Right.
the minute like this is what I was saying. Where this storyline for me was super predictable. When it hit, the minute he walked in and I saw the dude on the dialysis machine, I was like,
Yeah.
he's gonna give him his fucking kidney and bounce.
Yep.
Yep.
I'm like, I
Totally.
know. I'm like, this dude is. I'm like, we are about to see damage to Locke. And kudos to Terry O'Quinn, because I'll tell you what, Locke on the island and Locke pre-island, when he hasn't been in his wheelchair, completely different characters. This
Well,
guy
yeah,
has managed to play the same character, but at two different places in his life with two completely different like mannerisms and a
Mhm.
physicality. And
And it's
it wasn't
interesting
just the
too
hair.
how much he is, how kind of weak he is before the island, right? Like how easily he gets played,
Yes.
how giving of himself he is, and naive he is for being as old as he was. He is very naive. He gets easily played by his dad,
Yeah.
who we assume is his dad. Like they don't ever do a DNA test, right? Like uh, we're pretty certain he's the dad. For him to be that
Oh, he's a
close to a
perfect
match and all
match.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think that dude is legitimately his father.
Are you saying that he's not, Kevin? Are you foreshadowing something that we need to know
hey, you read into it however you want.
Fuck you. Oh, God damn it. Now I'm going to spin on that later when I'm watching fucking.
But like, it's even worse at the end of the episode when he shows back up at the house, and you can see the
stuttering fucking
security,
quick
how
gap.
bad the security guard feels because he can't let him
Oh,
in.
yeah.
He's like, oh, he's recovering, and he won't let him in. And that leads into the end of the episode, which we'll get to in a minute. But
If I
before
can make
this, we
another
yes, you
random
can.
comment. Just
Mhm.
another random comment. Something that I have noticed about this show. And again, it's a fucking props to and it just I don't know. Kudos to both to Abrams and Lindelof for this, because it feels like they kind of cast even the most tiniest bit parts like absolutely perfectly. I've watched a lot of procedurals and things like that. That security guard did not ever seem familiar to me again. Like that could be that guy's only fucking film credit whatsoever.
Mhm.
Right? Or maybe he's done another guest spot here or there, but he didn't go on to do other stuff really that we know about. But
I think
in
there's
that
a
moment,
lot of
like you said, it was a perfect little moment of him, like he emoted the feeling that was perfect for the scene without it being either too much or too little. Like it was
yeah,
absolutely
yeah.
perfect. And
You
it's
could
this guy
see he
who's like a
felt
bit
bad for
character.
John, but he had to do his job. Like he wasn't going to let him
I
in. He
bought
doesn't know the
it.
backstory. He just knows that he can't let him in.
Yeah.
When you talk about casting, it's interesting to think about the fact that the show was shot in Hawaii. So for any character that wasn't a major character, that wasn't going to have a recurring arc, they probably cast somebody local, which would leave a lot of Hollywood regulars out of it, right?
Yes.
And people that would get recurring gigs somewhere else. It wasn't until after Lost that shows like Hawaii Five-O were getting shot, that other shows are being shot in Hawaii. It wasn't a place that TV shows would occur regularly. They'd be destination spots in TV shows or movies,
Yeah.
but it wasn't a popular film location. It's not a large enough place that you can really get away with that. And so there's a lot of actors on that show that were main actors that moved to Hawaii and lived in Hawaii because of the show.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah, yeah. Because it's just easier. You can't commute there.
Yeah.
So it's like when people shoot in Vancouver, right? They move to Vancouver. In this case, it's Hawaii, and people moved to Hawaii to do the show. So, in all our discussion here, we've completely ignored the fact that Boone is talked into climbing up into the plane, finds the
Yeah.
radio and tries to use it.
Get someone.
He
Hears someone on the radio.
Yep, and tells them who they are. We're survivors of Oceanic Flight 815, and then falls and dies. Well, it doesn't fall and die there, but falls and is crushed when the plane lands. And then John Locke hulks out and throws him on his shoulder and carries him back to the camp.
Oh yeah, hold on. Let's backpedal because we did miss a couple of things in there. So when they were trying to use the trebuchet to crack open the hatch, that was when Locke was having the vision, and that's when a piece of shrapnel from the trebuchet popped off and hit him in the leg, and
Which
all
he
of a sudden,
didn't feel.
which he didn't feel, and so all of a sudden he's losing feeling in his legs again, which is very interesting. It's and I think what that showed is, like you pointed out, how much more physically not demanding but physically not intimidating. Anyway, physically he was just much more of a threat than he was back in the real world. You know, like Locke seems to be improving every episode, if you will. Like he's like headed towards Locke final form. You know, like he's fucking like Super Saiyan 1 Locke right now, but we're like getting closer to Super Saiyan 3. And he all of a sudden he's expecting the hatch to open. He gets the vision of the plane. He expects the hatch to open, and he throws that little hissy fit about like
That's at
why.
the end of the episode.
Oh, that's
not
right.
there
The
yet.
hissy fit's at the end. But he's no, that's right. I mixed that up. But no, but
It's hilarious to see Kevin get pissed off.
But he's like for a moment there, it's almost like he lost faith in the island, and so the island took his legs back.
Yep.
But then when he needed it and he saw it was provided, there's the radio, like something was there, and then he had to take Boone, and so the island, gave him his legs back a little bit, and now he's back to regular John Locke because he's starting to,
I don't know if it's in this
anyway.
episode or a later episode, but he at one point he literally says Boone is the sacrifice the island demanded. That's like literally his line.
Oh,
it's a
no,
later episode.
Yeah, it's way later.
Yeah, and so that's his thinking, right? Is that at least for him, and it doesn't seem like for anybody else, but at least for him, the island is a living, breathing thing.
Yeah,
it is a thing that he fully believes in, and it makes sense, right? He landed on this island, and all of a sudden he can walk again. So it makes sense that he gets drawn into, the magic of this place that maybe other people aren't buying into. And whereas, Jack is a pure pessimist. So even though he saw his dad, and he had all his hallucinations or whatever, he sees that as like an effect of being on the island, or not feeling well, or being tired or whatever. He doesn't see it the same way Locke does, where Locke is 100% this is the island doing all this stuff. And I think Jack is too level-headed to just buy into that, right? So he's looking for the more rational reason for these things to happen. And it makes sense that Locke would see it differently, because he knows he couldn't walk. He knows that he was in a wheelchair, and he knows that he woke up on that island and was fine. And so, that's something that he's got to lean into that other people don't.
I will tell you that I hope that Locke's incapacity is somehow psychosomatic rather than immaculate, where somehow the island gives him the ability to walk rather than gives him the ability to know that he can walk, rather than, you know what I mean? Like, if in the end I guess if it is immaculate, then I hope that this is their foray into the afterlife, that they're all dead and this is how they get to their next spot, rather than somehow the island gives them the ability to walk, right? If it's I would, to me, I would prefer if his inability to walk is psychosomatic, and being on the island pushes that block away and lets him walk, because we don't know why he's in a wheelchair. We have no idea at this point. We just know he's in a wheelchair. So
You don't know why he's in a wheelchair.
I don't know why he's in a wheelchair.
Fuck you,
And
Kevin.
it could be, and clearly we've seen he's clearly had some mental things happen to him with his father that could push him into perhaps a psychosomatic reason for him to be in a wheelchair, right? We don't know. We haven't seen him. I kept waiting for the accident to happen where it would put him in a wheelchair. Like, there's so many times in that episode where we see, like,
Yeah, he gets hit by the car in the parking lot. Like, yeah,
exactly.
Well, here's to your point. I think almost in a way, like I like what you're saying, Andy. That would be an interesting idea. I think the thing though that leans into me almost in some ways for the purgatory idea is because, or the classic idea of purgatory, where you're trying to kind of, if you will, exercise the demons that you didn't exercise in life, or pay off a debt, if you will. I think the interesting idea with Locke is that Locke is getting to be the man he could have been had he not been a foster child. Had he not,
Well, aren't they
you know,
all getting the ability to do something? I don't disagree with you, Pete, at
oh
all.
no, they are, but I think Locke is the only person so far
Well, he's
that's
leaning into
kind
it.
of conscious of, no, I think it's more than just leaning into it. I think he understands this. And I don't think he thinks of it as purgatory. I think he thinks of it as the island, and he doesn't know what it is. And I think that's part of the reason why he's so obsessed with the hatch. And I think there is a little bit of, I'm keeping this to myself because of this. That he,
Yeah,
I don't think he
yeah.
necessarily understands what's going on, but I feel like Locke is getting to be the person that he maybe wanted to be or could have been had his life not taken the turns that it did. I mean, let's be real.
Yeah.
If you were like born into the foster system and aged out, you got, I mean, I hope you have built some sort of a structure for yourself, because that's a tough road to hoe in most cases. You hear a
Yeah.
lot of horror stories about that. To be able to, do that, and I mean, look, he's in his early mid 40s and he's working in a toy store. He's driving a busted ass VW Bug.
Right. The only other person that I would say, I get you 100%, 100%. There's only two other characters so far that maybe I would put in the same vein of what you're saying with Locke. One is the kid. I forget his name.
Walt.
Walt is, he doesn't have a life experience as Locke for sure, but he is leaning into the island a little bit. Like, maybe he doesn't know that it's the island, but he doesn't want to leave the island. He knows that this is where he wants to stay. Like, he's leaning into that. He burns the fucking boat. Like, he doesn't burn the boat in the end. We find that out, but he doesn't want to leave, for sure. And I really feel like the only other person besides Boone, or not Boone, but Locke and Walt. No, it really is them. I was going to maybe say Boone too, but Boone is just following Locke.
Mhm.
Boone Boone's a follower. He doesn't really know what's up. But Walt for sure is in my opinion the same vein as as Boone. Pardon me, as Locke. He knows that what he has is something different, and he doesn't want to leave it.
See, I never got that from Walt. I literally took Walt at face value. In my eyes, I look at Walt and what Walt's been through, and the fact that Walt obviously has some sort of psychic ability, if you will, as we saw with the bird crashing into the window and things like that, or he's in tune with something else out
Yep.
there. Okay. I think you put him on an island like this, take the purgatory idea out of it. It's just a fucking island where some weird, crazy shit is happening that we don't know what's causing it yet, right? But, say Walt is already this psychic kid, and then you get put the first person that you haven't even made a connection with the person who is is now your father, your caregiver, is supposed to be responsible for you for everything. The first real connection you make is with this guy who lays on your little 10-year-old brain some heavy shit that I couldn't walk before I hit this island, and now I can. You're teaching him all sorts of cool shit about survival. Like there's all sorts, teaching him how to throw knives. Well, his dad's just being a fucking bummer. His dad's just trying to be a responsible dad. For whatever reason, Michael's jealousy. I mean, that's a whole nother character study for a different episode. But I think I always thought Walt just wanted to stay there because it was a simpler life. This kid is this, like he said, I don't want to move anymore.
Mhm.
Because he's had to hop around with his mom. So all of a sudden he's found a place where he's just with his dad, where it's simple. He doesn't have to worry about meeting other kids and going to school. I could also, it's tough because I could also be looking at this because I've got a 10-year-old in my house right now. And so I've got, this sounds weird, like ready exposure to 10-year-olds. So I understand the emotional intelligence level like right now to like think about, like Walt's motives, or at least that's what, or it could just be what's coloring my perception of it. But I feel like Walt just wants to kick it because he's like I'm cool. I've moved all the time. I've got this simple life on this island. I help my dad, other adults do shit. I get to throw the ball with my dog. I have enough food that I'm not starving. People are paying attention to me all the time. Everybody always wants to know where I am. Or at least my dad does for sure. Like most of his attention comes to me when he's not trying to punch Korean dudes or get slapped by their wives. And
To be fair, if I was a 10-year-old boy like that, I mean, fuck that. If I was Locke, I mean, that's if I have food, I have drink, I have a purpose. Like besides like the ability to go to a mall, like what am I missing? Like it's not horrible. I don't want to say like put me on a desert island with no chance of recovery, but like they have all of the things they need to survive. Like I don't know that I'd be so far. I don't know. I'd be like looking for. I mean, of course, I'd be looking for recovery so I can see my friends and family again and stuff like that. But as a 10-year-old boy, like, what are they missing? He doesn't even know what he's missing.
Exactly.
Like that's actually kind of a cool, like
that's what I'm saying. That's how I always took Walt's motive, for wanting to stay. I think it really was at face value.
Yeah.
I don't think I don't think it was him wanting to stay because he was like getting off on the island's psychic amplifying abilities or anything like that. I don't think Walt's necessarily as conscious of that yet as maybe some of the other people are starting to be a little bit. I think Jack is starting to. No, No, it's really not even Boone. Yeah, it's really just it is just Locke and um Walt who really kind of knows something's going on with the island. But I think Walt is a 10-year-old that knows what's something's going on with the island, and it doesn't. It's like 10-year-olds get it. They understand the difference between reality and fantasy, but when something so strange and out of the the realm of what's normal happens, they get, at least most 10-year-olds that I know tend to kind of not shut down but search for the familiar and the home and try and find something that they can latch on to. And I think Walt is just found home. I think
Yes,
he's just like,
I agree. Now I'm going to not go off topic, but I'm going to stay on this topic. But I'm going to go outside of the show for a second. Pete. So, there, what, I don't remember what post it was or where it was posted. I think it was on Facebook. Something about the show came up. I think it was on one of the one of the things, the show that we posted, and people were saying like, I lost interest when the smoke monster came in. Did that give you any pause when people were like, I lost interest when it became this?
no, because I've always known the smoke monster is a thing that's out there, and I never know what it actually was. Like, I keep referring to it. Like, there's the beast on the island that devoured the pilot. Like, we've referred to that on this show as the smoke monster. Like, we know that's what it is, but I have no actual idea. Um, it's very interesting. I don't think, no, we don't see it in this episode, so I'm not going to talk about it yet. But it's interesting once we get to see in a few episodes the hatch when it's been excavated partially, when it's not just the hatch, when there's a lot more dug out of it. But good God, I think we just spent like 10 minutes talking about fucking Walt. So let's, where are we now, Kevin?
Yeah, you remember that one time that Boone fell down in an airplane?
Yeah.
So Locke brings him back to camp, right? Drops him off and fucking bails. Like he tells Jack that Boone fell off a cliff, which he did not do. And Jack turns around and asks him another question, and he's gone. And now we finally get to this moment where Locke is at the hatch, and he's losing it. He's like, to no one, and he says, I've done everything you've ever asked of me.
I've done everything you wanted me to do. So why did you do this to me?
Which as far as we know, no one's actually asked him to do anything, right? Like, we've never seen Joe Island walk up to Locke and be like, hey buddy, why don't you do these 6 things, right? Like, so this
Joe
is
Island. I like that.
Yeah, so like, this is, to a degree, at least it feels like,
is that what he says? For some reason I remember him throwing a hissy fit, and I remember
he
him
says,
saying,
I have done everything the island has asked of me. He's like, I don't know what else I can do. He slams his fist down, and the light and the hatch lights up in his face, like the light comes on.
I remember that. I can't believe I didn't pick up on that line, because that's that's a very interesting take, because that means like we now have 2 other people at this point, I believe, unless I'm jumping ahead. If I'm jumping ahead, you'll tell me, but I think we already talked about it. We now have had, no. We've had a couple of people who have heard the whispers.
Yep.
Now
Yeah,
Sawyer's, yes, we're kind of
Sawyer,
Sawyer,
Sawyer and
Saeed, and Rousseau, we know, has heard them also.
right.
And Jack heard
He heard his
Claire
dad,
when
didn't
nobody
he?
else did. No, he heard Claire when nobody else did. So Kate was right with
Oh,
him. He
okay.
heard Claire screaming.
and Saeed too.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Perfect. It's just the idea of talking to the island, because that Locke could have been hearing that the whole time and paying attention to it, and you know,
It is totally plausible that he has heard the whispers and interacted with them and never told anybody, because he wouldn't, right? As we can see with the hatch, like he wouldn't he
exactly.
wouldn't have told Boone about the hatch if Boone hadn't been with him, like, and so because Boone was there and Boone knew about it, he became a tool, but he
Kevin,
never would have told Boone about
I don't know if you're telling us what we want to hear or you're telling.
it.
Well, see,
I
but
don't
then
know what you're talking about. I've never seen this show.
then and then though this leads me into the idea, and it would suck, and this could be why people hated the series finale, but like this entire thing could be someone's like fever dream or coma dream that they're having somewhere back in the world, because that Locke's little
Look,
thing right there.
I don't want to spoil it for you, but at the end of the very last episode, Bob Newhart wakes up.
Honey. Honey, wake up. You won't believe the dream I just had.
And
Listen, asshole.
No,
If I
but
see
it's very
Bob
interesting
Newhart episode, I'm gonna be pissed off.
because
dude,
that and
I would have loved it. I'd have
I
been like,
would've-
that's fucking genius. I'd have been like, I'm good. I'm good. I never need to watch any more television ever again.
that whole thing, like, is very much like a what you call a hallucinogenic drug kind of effect with things like those kind of whispers. You'll get auditory hallucinations on like mushrooms or LSD kind of in the background that are just, it's like whispers. They're indistinct. You can't tell what they are. But if you let yourself focus in on them a little bit, all of a sudden
You
they
kill your
become a
family.
thing.
I know how this goes.
Yeah, no, like they become a thing, and that's like kind of where your trip goes. It's very interesting that maybe part of the reason why Locke was saying that and why they haven't shown the island talking to Locke, if you will, is because Locke's the only one that didn't resist it.
And this is why you should both watch The Tourist when it comes to LSD trips. Not giving anything away for sure, but yes, I 100% agree with you, Pete. That could be at 100%. This could be an MK Ultra deal in the end of the day when it comes to Locke. I do feel like somehow this needs to eventually focus and end on one character's dreams, and that somehow that one character has somehow interacted with or seen or been privy to everybody else's existence, either via TV or a news article or something, and this is their hallucination. And I feel at this point, only because I know that Locke seems to be a main character towards the end, again, only because of what I remember from the TV experience, that it could be Locke. But I'm feeling you 100% here.
All right, I think that's the end of our character studies for the evening, because we have three.
It's not, because we still have 3 more episodes to go. So in
I
episode
know.
number 2, which is episode 20, titled Do No Harm, which would indicate it's a doctor's episode, and sure enough, it's a Jack episode. In the main timeline is pretty straightforward. There's basically two things happening at once in the primary timeline, and that is Boone dying and Claire's baby being born. And interestingly, both of those things happen essentially at the same time. So you're kind of trading a life for a life, right? Not to dumb down the entire episode, because there's a whole lot of good drama in there, and all that, like a Jin trying to pass on the message without being able to speak any English, and then Charlie coming back with him, and Kate ultimately being the one to deliver the baby because Jack is too busy working on Boone.
Boom.
And
That-
in
I was very
Right.
impressed with this episode and the entire birthing process and the way they did it, because I feel like at one point, like Charlie or somebody else acknowledges the little extra bits that were attached to the baby
Mhm.
when they pull them out, like the umbilical cord. Like it was a very like real human moment in spite of everything that's going on. This dude is like kind of freaked out because of the umbilical cord and the afterbirth, and it's like I never knew that all of that was like that.
Mhm.
With that, which I think all three of us have seen children born
Yeah.
at this point, so you're a little more used to like what it looks like, so I think that was a funny little human moment for Charlie in there. But they just did it really well. Like they didn't make it overly cheesy. They didn't make it actually wasn't overly dramatic. Like she just had the baby. They could have done some shit where,
Yeah,
the baby's breach. Oh, it's
yeah.
like they could have thrown
where
some
the
other
real
bullshit
drama
into there.
happens is with Claire beforehand. Like she's not ready to have this baby. She really
Yes.
is still holding out hope that she can deliver this baby off the island. Like when her contractions stop, like she's like, okay, cool, I'm good. And then her water breaks and she's freaking out. Like
Hicks, motherfucker.
yeah, like she legitimately freaks out, and Kate has to be there to help her and talk her down.
Hey,
And so,
real quick. Sorry. Was she pregnant? Did she have kids? Evangeline Lily,
in real life,
yeah, in real life.
I don't know. I think so.
She looked in these episodes, the way she was wearing her shirt and stuff, it looked like she was trying to hide pregnancy.
She was never pregnant on Lost. I can tell you that right now.
Well, I know she's not pregnant on Lost, but was she pregnant in real life?
Hell no, dude.
No,
Craft
that's what I'm saying.
Services
Like,
was just
when she was
fucking banging on Lost.
No, as a matter of fact,
everybody was hiding shit with camera angles. You had fucking Kahlua pork and poi every day.
Yeah.
They're rolling out.
during Lost, she actually dated Dominic Monaghan. She dated Charlie in real life for a while during the first and second season.
Do a little research on your boy Dominic Monaghan. He's been attached to some very interesting people.
Yeah, he's a cool dude.
Yeah, that's a whole nother discussion. So I'm just saying, do a little Google that, and you'll be fucking surprised.
Yeah, he plays well.
Fair enough.
Yeah, not quite Pete Davidson level of what the fuck, but like it's still like there's a couple on his list that you're just like, huh? Okay, continue.
He's slinging some dick.
Anyways,
okay, go ahead.
So within the main timeline, I mean, that's basically everything that happens, right? In the past, it's actually, even though there is the past is sort of doesn't feel all that pivotal, right? It's information, but it's not huge information. We find out that Jack was married. He's getting married when the episode starts. We meet his wife, who is actually Claire Dunphy.
Yay!
Yep. And we find out that
hot as shit. Really?
No. You know what I've loved about
She's a little too skinny for me.
her? No, I agree. I agree with that. I think she's a beautiful woman. I think the thing that I've loved the most about that actress, she does not she has aged a little, but she looks exactly the same as she did in fucking Happy Gilmore. As she does
with better hair.
Yes. Like she didn't like if she had any sort of work done anywhere, you do not know it, which is really cool, because I feel like she's like kind of maintaining that just like natural I'm aging look, which I think we were talking about that pre-show.
Which and to think about it, I mean, this was 15 years ago too, right? When she was on Lost was 15 years ago. It was not 10 years, but 6 or 7 years before she started doing Modern Family, right? So she was younger, and then Happy Gilmore, she was even younger. Obviously, that was a while before that, but we find out that her and Jack are getting married because Jack fixed her. She was in a bad car accident and was told she couldn't walk, and Jack is the reason that she could walk. Um, so we find out that Jack is not above banging a patient. Um, although, in his case, once you've done your surgery, they're not really your patient anymore after that, right? Um, and so in their same timeline, we find out that they tasked each other with writing their vows, and he can't do it. Like, he can't do it. She's got hers set up, and he's struggling to get it done. Um, and in this moment, his dad shows up and gives him a little dad speech, which at one point even kind of says, you don't have to do that.
I
You know,
actually enjoyed that. Again, for Jack, it's the only human moment of
with his dad.
happiness that we get with his dad.
Mhm.
Every other thing is his dad laying some sort of bullshit guilt on him, or berating him, or every or fucking running away from him in the jungle. um like we you never see a positive interaction, and that was actually a really cool little father son
Mhm.
moment, so that it really does solidify how big a dick the dad actually is.
Yeah.
Just because you can like, if you're a dick and you're just always a fucking dick, well then that's one thing. But you're an even bigger dick if you're like sometimes a nice guy, but then you choose to go ahead and be a dick the rest of the time. Because you're a nice guy, we know you don't have to be a dick. So you're like choosing the dick life. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Anyway.
Yeah. So we get their vows, and Jack says his thing about how, oh, she saved me, not the other way around. Um, and they have this fine moment, and it basically ends with us finding out, yeah, Jack's a good guy. He pushed, did this thing that nobody else could do. He saved this woman that nobody else could save, and they fell in love and got married, right? And then we get to the very end of the episode, not tied to that at all. We get to the very end of the episode where he's sitting on the beach with Kate, and Kate says, something about Boone dying, and Jack says, "Oh no, Boone didn't die; he was murdered." And then he gets up and he says and goes after Locke. Like, that's how the episode ends,
Yeah,
right?
it was very interesting to me though. I was trying to, I always feel like you can always, to some degree or in some way, kind of draw some sort of parallel, even if it's not direct, between the flashback and the what's happening in the real timeline. Only because they don't, like, when you get the flashback, it's not just because it's a character centric
It's usually
episode.
to highlight something about the character,
Yeah,
where they are. And in this one, it's to highlight the fact that he can't give up on Boone, right? Like, he saves people. That's what he does. And
exactly.
so
because
he
because
can't not
any
save them.
doctor,
Mhm.
and again, I got my MD from years and years of watching emergency room shows on
ER
fucking
and
TV.
Chicago Med.
Exactly. um but dude, even I know, if like in that situation, Boone was dead.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing.
Super dead.
When Jack figured out his lung was fucked, when his leg got compartment syndrome, and that's the thing, Jack was still thinking straight up like a doctor, like he was back in the world, because
Mhm.
he's like, okay, well, we'll take his leg and then we'll do that. And I'm like, okay, if you take this dude's leg and he manages to survive everything else, you don't have enough antibiotics to
Yeah.
fight
Yeah.
off
You
the
can't.
fucking infection that stump is going to have. Like, and
Yeah.
Jack would have, as a doctor, had he been in his right state of mind in that situation, known that. And I think it is a very interesting look at him. I'm very interested to see what happens with the wife, because this is the first, like, of any notion at all that we have that Jack was married.
Mhm.
She has never come up in the entire show
Yeah.
until this episode. I don't think there's ever been a, like, I think maybe Kate, unless, unless I'm just not remembering it, but maybe when Kate and he was having a conversation with somebody and said, "Are you married?" or something. He said divorced, as opposed to no. But
Mhm.
I don't think we've ever seen a conversation like that. So
Yeah, I can't remember. I can't remember if it came up ever or not. It seems to me that it hasn't.
like it's been because it's been all about Jack and his dad.
Mhm. Yeah,
So I'm
and to
wondering.
be honest, I mean, if it came up that he was married and divorced, I don't think anybody would think two things about that right now. I mean, you can see he's kind of a difficult guy, um, and he's very hard headed and all that. So if you told me that guy had been married and divorced, I'd just be like, oh, that makes sense.
Well,
He's
he's having greatness thrust upon him right now.
mhm. So this episode finishes up and we roll right into a revenge mode, where Shannon and or sorry, where Jack is looking for Locke to kill him, and Kate kind of talks him down and brings him back. And in the past, we find out that Saeed, it starts off Saeed in an airport being escorted by two security guards. Well, it looks like an airport, maybe it's somewhere else, but he's being escorted by two men in uniform, um, to a woman who is from the CIA, telling him she wants him to spy on somebody that he knows. And in return for doing this, they will give him the location of the girl that we saw in the previous episode, the one that he basically shot himself to let escape, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, despite whatever better judgment he may have, he agrees to that deal. So he agrees to go and track down his friend and work with him and prove that this guy is a terrorist, so that he can get his girl back. Uh, and so that's all going in the background. In the current timeline, we have Boone's funeral, which everybody's struggling to speak at. It seems like, for as much as Boone did, and for as much as he was around everybody, it feels like maybe nobody really knew Boone. And the one person that probably did was Locke, right? And he wasn't there for obvious reasons. And then Saeed steps up and has a heartfelt moment, and really says something really kind um, about Boone. And that's when Locke does show up, and he's covered in Boone's blood, right? Like his shirt is just soaked, and he takes the blame for the attack on on Boone. He takes the blame for him dying right there in front of everybody.
Yeah, he explains to them what happened. That was I got why Locke was staying away. I think this is one of the only moments in this show where I felt it was a little over dramatic. Like showing up at the funeral was almost like a trope, if you will, to that point. Like I don't want to say it was predictable, but it was like it's the only time that so far that this show where I was like, like I get it, because it's also a safer way to do it.
In
But
front of everyone.
But
and Jack tries to beat the shit out of him.
Yeah.
And they pull him off, and at this point Jack is worn out, right? Like he has given a bunch of his blood to Boone. He hasn't slept. He's a mess.
My boy needs some boar bad,
right?
He needs some protein to build that blood supply back up.
So after this is over, he does tell Saeed that Boone told him about the hatch. So now the circle of the hatch is kind of quietly growing, right? Locke doesn't know that Boone told Jack, and he doesn't know that Jack told Saeed. And so this is building towards more people discovering the hatch, right? But in this primary timeline, you've got Shannon finally asking Saeed to do something about Locke, right? and at the same time, in a more kind of sweet but kind of funny kind of side timeline thing, Kate drugs Jack to knock him out because he won't sleep. So she crushes up
Yeah.
some sleeping pills in his water, and that's pretty hilarious to watch him uh him go down.
It was funny. My oldest pointed out, she's like, man, they wouldn't have access to sleeping pills to make you fall asleep that fast. And I was like,
That's true.
yeah, but no, because I actually there's an easy explanation on that one that actually does
He
make
is
sense.
well, he's really low on his blood, and
Exactly. There's no
yeah,
way he could fight that at all. Like, because he
yeah,
was
he's
trying to
already
fight it,
exhausted.
and it
Yeah,
was like, no. Because it's like one of those, like, when you're super tired and all you have is a Tylenol PM and you take it, and like
and
15
then it's
minutes
the next
later
day.
you're like, oh, it's
Yeah.
been 12 hours.
Hmm.
So I that like I could buy. Um, but yeah, just very interesting that then when just Jack because he wakes up in this episode.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
It's,
He does wake up later on in the episode, um, and we'll get to when he wakes up.
yeah,
But for now, Saeed, after having been asked by Shannon to do something about Locke, Saeed says, tells Locke that he could use the radio from the plane,
the
and
battery.
asks Locke to
No,
take him to the plane.
that's right.
Um, and so they go, they go out on their mission to the plane, and while they're out there, Saeed is very calmly and quietly asking him questions about the plane and basically trying to inch him towards um, the hatch without directly asking towards the hatch. And this is where we finally find out who knocked out Saeed in that early episode when they were trying to launch their flares. It turns out it was Locke that knocked Saeed out.
Huge reveal.
Yeah, yeah, it really is.
Something that I hadn't even thought about because so much other shit had gone on. But that
Hmm.
was actually one of the very first mysteries that has been
Hmm.
around that has not been explained yet. And we haven't talked about it. Nobody's even brought it up. And it was so interesting because so much other shit has gone on that you don't like that who knocked out Saeed. It's so far out there because you just assume it might have been Ethan
Or Sawyer, one of
or
the two.
Sawyer.
Like, right, like Sawyer was the main culprit. It could have been Ethan. By now, at the time, you wouldn't have suspected Ethan, but we don't know. And
See,
so,
I marked Sawyer off that list though right away because Sawyer is nothing if not a pragmatist, and there's no way he was going to interfere with anything, even for revenge, that was going to hinder the possibility of getting off the fucking island.
yeah.
Like Sawyer comes off because of that southern accent and like things that he's said as like non-educated, but Sawyer is that perfect example of not book smart but street smart. He is
Hmm.
like an amazing con man. He understands people. He knows motivations, and like I said, he's a pragmatist. He's hoarded all these supplies, and makes deals with things. Under this guise of like he makes that line about whatever commie thing or something about it all being like the communist island or something
Hmm.
like that when Jack was trying to get him to share stuff. I think it was back with the with Shannon's inhalers.
Hmm.
Going that far back that he makes the comment. I think that was just Sawyer that was some bullshit. I think Sawyer is just he knows how to manipulate people, and he knows if he has goods, people are going to need him, and he can get favors and he can get things from other people. Like is it in this one or is it in the next one where we find out Sawyer's bought his way onto the boat?
The next one.
It's the next one. But yeah, so I think that character gets a little, or Sawyer's a little underestimated by these
For
people.
sure,
So
for sure. He
I didn't think
yeah.
he attacked Saeed, even though like they point at that, a little bit. But I don't think so. I didn't think so even then. I was like, just even then, that character just didn't seem to me the type that was going to fuck up trying to get off the island.
Mhm.
Moving on.
So yeah. And so now that they're finally at the plane, Saeed fully confronts Locke about the hatch, and Locke very deftly says, "Oh, there's two hatches on the plane. Whatever." And at least seemingly, it seems like Saeed buys that, right? So when they get back to camp,
Again,
Saeed
because
actually tells Shannon that he believes her. That he believes Locke.
yeah, I don't think Saeed actually did though. I don't. I think because we're getting that storyline where he is, working for the CIA, and he in himself is being duplicitous with this guy with the whole suicide bomb thing that's going on, and some of the ways that he approaches problems and thinking is more than just being a military person, if you will, and some of the knowledge that he has and some of the things like yes, he's part of the Republican Guard, but you feel like he wasn't just a jailer there. Like he's had some training in interrogation techniques, not just torture,
Mhm.
but like actual, like how to interrogate people. So
He's not a grunt.
exactly. Like he screams as like military intelligence in
Mhm.
a lot of ways. And so I think the Saeed story, I think we're still not done with, even though now we know why Saeed was in Australia, and now we know why
But
Saeed was on the plane.
yeah, right. But what we do find out, and yeah, well, let's just get there real
Oh
quick.
yeah,
So
yeah.
Saeed is, he kind of buys his way into the group by pulling a bug out of the fire alarm, right? So
Yeah,
they
yeah, yeah.
start to pick up on that maybe he's on their side. He really is getting close to this friend again, so he actually goes to the CIA and says, "No, I'm out." Um, and so they threaten to arrest Nadia now, right? So they're
Yeah.
still using her against him, um, and say, "Oh well, if we arrest her, she'll be an unlawful enemy combatant. She'll be held, indefinitely." Um, and so now, so Saeed's got a choice to make, and so again, he chooses the girl, and so he knows the lay of the land. So when he talks his friend into being the martyr, and then the martyr asks Saeed to be a martyr with him, of course he says yes, because he knows that's not actually going to happen. Like the CIA isn't going to let him get to the point where they
Actually,
set off the
yeah.
bomb, right?
He's got a way out.
Right. And so when they go to actually deliver the bomb, he doesn't want to see his friend go down, and so he tells him to run. He tells him he's got 10 minutes or whatever to run. Um, and then his friend finds out that this is all over a girl, and he can't take it, and he shoots himself right in front of Saeed.
Yes.
And so everything goes down, everything happens, and the CIA gives him his plane ticket to go home. They give him a ticket home, say get on this plane tomorrow, and you can go out. And Saeed then asks about his friend, and they're like, oh well, we're going to cremate him. And so Saeed is actually the one that trades his plane ticket for a later ticket, so that he can properly bury his friend.
Yeah.
So the CIA wasn't putting him on that plane. He chose to end up on that plane because he needed to do something for his friend.
Yeah. That was a very interesting twist for Saeed
Mhm.
in there. I saw that and I was kind of like, nice, because it was just a fun extra little like, oh, this guy shouldn't have even been on this plane in the first place.
Right. Yeah, he kind of ended up on the plane by his own choices, not because somebody put him there. Even though for a minute it kind of felt like, oh, the CIA was putting him on this specific flight.
Well, and he was also in some ways he got on the flight because he was trying to already make up for something bad he had done. Like when you look at the other passengers at the moment now that we've got, everybody's running from something, everybody's got some sort of sadness. I mean, other than maybe like say Walt and Michael. No, because even that, because Walt is running from or going away from his dead mother and his stepfather, who basically rejected him,
Yeah, his stepfather's a piece of shit.
like fucking garbage
Uh,
human being.
Yep.
So so it's very interesting. So Saeed is kind of like, I feel like the only one of the passengers whose backstories we really know right now that was, Hurley was running, to try and figure out what was going on with the numbers.
Mhm.
And yeah, just interesting about Saeed. Good character. Didn't think I was gonna like him at first.
Oh, I love Saeed. Yeah. So the other thing that we have not talked about in this episode that is just fun is Claire has had the baby. She's exhausted. She needs a nap and won't take one.
Oh
And so
yes.
Charlie, being Charlie, is like, "Look, let me take care of the baby, and you should nap." And so he finally convinces her to. And he's walking around with the baby, and the baby won't stop crying. So Hurley tries, and he does this silly shit, which lasts like 2 seconds. After he's super confident, he's like, "Okay, let me pull out the big guns." Does something for 2 seconds, and he's like, "That's all I got." So you're like, "Thanks, Hurley. That was awesome."
And plus, and yeah, and again, as the father of remembering having small children, what Hurley did for like a newborn, you were like, no, dude,
Yeah, you're like, no,
no,
that kid's not paying attention.
no.
And so I love that uh, we find out that the only thing that can make this baby sleep is the sound of Sawyer's voice,
Yes,
right? Which is just hilarious. So he ends up reading Car and Driver magazine to this infant
so funny.
so that it can go to sleep. And so that's just like this fun little sideline. But back to Shannon being very anti-Locke.
Oh,
When
real
Jack
quick,
wakes up, oh, go ahead.
that little storyline though, and what they've been doing with Claire's baby and Charlie and Claire, I have a feeling in like the finales coming forward, just the way that the show seems to be written, that some shit's gonna go down involving the baby and Claire. They're gonna be huge pivotal pieces in the final 3 episodes of this season, because I feel like, I don't know, maybe like the people associated with Ethan are going to come and like demand the baby or something. Like, I don't know, but because they're making all these little happy moments for them, and right now those, like that little group is the comic relief for the show that's in there. Like the episode before, you had Jack and Sawyer and the eyeglasses, or whichever episode that was. And granted, in the Boone episode, you didn't necessarily have comic relief, but you had the joy of the baby being born. So there was like the lightness in the show there, the little bit of the balance. But as the show has kind of shown us, they're going to fucking crush whatever the hell is good that's going on right there. Like it
feels that way, doesn't it?
It's gonna break fucking bad for them. Like I just I can't see that, like that happy bliss lasting and not being like super duper crushing. Anyway,
It feels that way.
that was my portent of doom right there. But yeah.
So speaking of people that are doomed, when Jack wakes up, he has no key around his neck, and Jack's instant assumption is that Locke has taken the key. And come to find, Saeed, he overhears, and he knows instantly that it's not Locke, it's Shannon that's taken the key. And so they hunt her down and find her with Locke at gunpoint. And Saeed actually tackles her to save Locke's life, even though the gun goes off and Locke gets grazed across the forehead. Saeed ultimately chooses to save a life, even though it costs him seemingly everything. Shannon is not his best friend right now. And so the episode ends with now Saeed finds Locke and finally calls him on his bullshit. Right?
Yeah.
He just looks at him and says, "Take me to the hatch," and Locke's like, "What hatch?" And he's like, "Come on, bro. Let's not.
Let's not play like this anymore.
Yeah, let's.
I've saved your life.
Yeah,
Fuck you. Show me the hatch."
yeah." So we've got that moment, and that's our end of that episode. And now we're on to our fourth episode of our watch, episode 22, "Born to Run," which is
Wow.
a great name for an episode about Katie.
Yeah.
Who is repeatedly in this episode called Katie, which is not something that we've, heard such a delicate name for Kate, right? Like Katie sounds so young and childish, and she's not. So the way the scene opens up, it almost looks like Claire, right? Like the episode, you see a blonde girl walking into a hotel room and sneaking into a hotel room, and then she dyes her hair and comes out and it's Kate with brown hair.
Okay. So I laughed with my wife. We were watching that, and I brought this up, and she was like, "God, A, that you would know that. B, okay, that's true. There is no, especially in the 90s, like home hair dye product that is, and granted, it was a wig, but that is going to take a bleached out, damaged ass blonde like that
and turn it into that perfectly healthy brown right away.
Evangeline Lilly, like, I was like, that was one where I was just like, oh, that was some 90s suspension of disbelief there, because that shit, no.
Yeah. So and then we find out she's got a letter, and she gets a little broken up by this letter that she's got, right? We don't know what it says, we don't know anything about it. And then we hop forward to the now, and Charlie and Kate are talking about the boat, and Charlie is certain that the boat is going to be a success, right?
Oh, we also know this is something else that gets very interesting about Kate. That's making me kind of change some things about like what Kate has said versus what we actually know of Kate. And this episode plays into it, but when she opens up her trunk after she turns into brunette and she's changing the license plates on her car, Kate had said her dad was an Army Ranger, and that's, he taught her all this stuff. And it's very interesting, and I'm not saying that that's not possible, but I also feel like, especially with the backstory of Kate we get a little later on in this episode, I feel like whatever happened that put Kate on the run initially, I think Kate somehow was a criminal. Even farther, like, continue on with the episode and it'll make more sense. Go with your synopsis, and what I'm saying is going to make more sense when we get to a certain point.
Sure will.
I'm jumping ahead. I'm jumping ahead with myself. That's why. Go ahead.
So we, for the first time in a very long time in this episode, we meet a new character. And that is Arst, the science teacher, who tells them that they really need to get the boat in the fucking water. And they should have already had the boat in the water, because the trade winds are about to change. And if the trade winds change, they're going to end up in Antarctica rather than heading to where they want to go, which is literally anywhere north, right? And he makes a convincing argument because everybody seems to believe him. And they don't, to our knowledge, they don't know him. We've never seen this guy before. But you have to assume that he's legit. They did their
early little census deal there.
Yeah. And so it's just fun kind of to see a new character get introduced for the first time in a very long time. And so they buy it. And so this is the point where Kate decides that she needs to get ahead of the game here and get off the island. So she asks to be on the raft. And Michael kind of says, no. He's like, I owe this spot to Sawyer. And you're kind of out of luck. But she does kind of make the argument. She's like, well, Sawyer bought his ticket on the last raft, which burned. And so they kind of go back and forth there, and then we flash back and find out that Kate finds an old friend, um, and she asks him to take her to see her mom, who is dying.
Diane, she calls her.
Yep. And then flash back to our current time, and Sun sits there and with Jin. It's the first time they've really interacted since their seeming breakup, right? And she asks him if he's going to go on the raft, and he essentially says yes.
He's kind of being a bitch. I had some time to think about this after we discussed it on the last episode. Like, I get where, like, the betrayal and his sense of pride and honor are hurt, and I get all that, but he's kind of being a bitch about the whole thing. Because if nothing else, if nothing else, it's the only motherfucker on the island that you can actually communicate with effectively.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Although him and Michael have worked up an excellent rapport, right?
That has become a fun little, actually, like, and I think it is this episode we see it in where Jin actually sticks up for Michael at one point, where you're very much like, oh, these two have, like, in spite of everything, have become fucking homies.
Yeah, like they really are like the married couple, right? Like I think they even Hurley says
somebody jokes about it. Yeah.
And so they've kind of taken the frenemy thing to their own level, right? Like they're maybe not best friends, but at the same time they kind of are, right? Like they're the two that have each other in that way. Like Michael doesn't really have a lot of friends on the island.
Yeah.
And Jin certainly doesn't. And so their relationship is kind of special for each one of them. And so here, there's a lot going on in this episode. So this one's all over the place. But Saeed now has found out about the hatch and takes Jack to see the hatch. And that is a very interesting exchange because, Jack's looking at it and blah, blah, and they're talking about something. And Jack's like, cool, yeah, we got to crack it open. And Saeed's like, what the shit, dude?
Yeah.
He's like, what, why? He's like, I forget what he says, and Jack's like, I can't see.
This was never not to be open from the outside.
There's no and Saeed's like, I can't see any reason that you would open it. Why do you think there's no handle on the outside? And at the same time, we know that Sawyer Kate is actively going after Sawyer for his spot on the raft.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, Michael gets sick. Right. So Michael's not feeling well. Is badly sick, and Jack, when he looks it over, thinks he's been poisoned.
Yeah.
And finds evidence of it in one of the water bottles. Meanwhile, in our past timeline, she her friend makes a phone call. He's a doctor at the hospital that her mom is at, and makes an appointment for her to go to an MRI. But it won't be until the morning. So they have a little time together. And so they drive out to this tree and they start digging something up, which in a few minutes we ultimately find out is a
Time
nuke on the block lunchbox.
Yes, you picked that. You caught that too.
Yeah.
I said that Christy and I were watching it, and I was like, yo, that was an NKOTB lunchbox. Yeah. She was like, yes, it was.
She was like, you're gay. And so they dig that up and they go through it and they find an old tape that they made together, which I don't know if you guys did, but I made a lot of those tapes, just fucking back in the day. That's what we had.
So I have vivid memories of when we first moved to California when I was around 9 or 10 years old. Mm-hmm. And my little brother had this Fisher Price, like, beige tape recorder, but you also had a record button and it had a little microphone there. And it's very interesting that we're podcasting now because I was making fake radio shows for a summer on a tape doing that.
Yep, that nobody else was ever going to hear, right?
Hell no, except for like my family when they sat around and watched me do it. But yeah, like, no, exactly. I don't think I remember I only probably listened back to them once or twice and then recorded over them. and then doing it. So it was funny because I thought the same thing.
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, like I remember doing bullshit like this as a kid. You
Yeah.
find something with a microphone. Oh yeah.
So so they listen to their recording, and on the recording, the little boy says, "Oh, something," and about how they're going to grow up and be married one day, which obviously they're not because he's married now and has a kid.
Is it on? I don't think it's on.
It's on.
Okay, this is Kate Austin and Tom Brennan, and this is our dedication for our time capsule here on August 15th, 1989. Hey, give me that back.
Why are you putting this stupid plane in there?
Because it's cool, Katie. I got it when I flew to Dallas by myself.
Ooh, that is cool. Just like this time capsule.
It'll be totally cool when we dig it up in like 20 years.
How do you know we'll be together?
Because we'll be married, and you'll be a mom, and we'll have 9 kids.
I don't think so. As soon as I get my license, we should just get in a car and drive, like, run away.
You always want to run away, Katie.
Yeah, and you know why.
Oh, hold on, but before we get the tape, we know this dude is gonna die. Because this is when they open up the box, that's where the plane is. The airplane's in there. And that also right there in that moment added a huge question for me. Right? We know he's going to die. We're not 100% sure how. And I hope we get some answers sometime soon. But what happens between what happens in this episode and Kate's, we know her little deal, like the last time when we saw Kate being an utter badass and robbing the bank with those guys. How does this plane go from this field into here into a fucking
safe deposit box?
And why is safe deposit? Like, it's a very interesting object to have in there. And why is this plane so important to her with this?
Well, as far as the importance goes, I think it ties back to this guy,
which makes sense. But at the same time, and I get that because he's obviously like first love, and she says, I killed the man I love, and I get that. But she's also like straight on the run for whatever it is.
Like legitimately jumps out of the car and runs physically.
Yeah, that there's something more with this fucking plane. Like this woman, unless like Kate is just out there, or we don't know what happened. Like all of a sudden now, I'm starting, and here's a theory I just hit on my head right now, where we're going, maybe Kate. Well, you know what? Actually, I'll drop that theory after you talk about what happens next in the flashback, because that leads me to where that actually was born from. Go ahead.
Well, in that particular scene of the flashback, the last thing that happens is that they kiss.
Yeah, and he pulls away.
Yeah, and it's an awkward moment because he really, he's married. And she wasn't. As a matter of fact, in the beginning of that flashback, he actually says it's not fair that she came back.
Yeah. Because he hella wants to, and his wife and kids are like conveniently out of town.
Yep. And so in our current timeline, all kinds of interesting stuff happens. So we're finding out that Michael was poisoned. Jack thinks he was poisoned, so they're trying to figure it out. And Hurley is talking to Sawyer and Locke, and says, "Oh, was it Kate because she was the criminal?" And Jack's like, "Fuck, dude." Nobody knows. And that kind of feeds into this thing where Jack and Locke have been going back and forth in this episode so far as to, oh, well, I don't have to tell everybody everything, why would I tell everybody everything? And
discretion or whatever.
Yeah. And so, everybody's keeping secrets at this point is what we're starting to find out. And so Kate asks Jack about Michael and finds out that, that he's been poisoned. And so we're going through all this. Meanwhile, when Walt bumps into Locke, he says, "Oh," he's like, I didn't poison my dad." And so, Locke kind of tells him, "Hey, I believe you. I think you're whatever. But when Locke touches Walt's arm, Walt jumps back
Yes.
and tells him to not open it. Doesn't say what it is, just says, don't open it, don't open it, and takes off. And no one's ever told, at least that we've seen, no one's ever told Walt about the hatch.
Nope.
So,
Or if he has overheard something,
mhm.
there was nothing that Locke said in the last few minutes of their exchange, if I remember correctly, that had anything to do with opening the hatch at all.
Mhm.
Like there was nothing there. Like Walt just got that vibe. I dug on that. I had that, like, that was a fun moment. And then the one, I think, a little later in the episode when Michael and Walt are sitting together and they're like, Walt admits to his dad that he burned the first boat.
Mhm.
He says, I burned your boat. He talked to him, he said, I just wanted to stay, and this and that. And Michael all of a sudden has this moment where he's like, all right, we'll stay.
Yeah.
Like, if this is for
all
you,
Michael
I'm
wants,
trying to do this for you.
Yeah, exactly. All he wants is what's best for his kid. He wants to be with his kid.
Which is I wish we had Andrew on tonight just to get his reaction to that, because
He
hates
Michael right now. Yeah.
And that is one of those moments where all of a sudden you're like, oh, dude, you know what? That was great. And Walt is just like, no, we need to get the fuck out.
Yeah.
He's like, I know I burned your boat because I wanted to stay, but I touched Locke's arm, and now we need to get the fuck out.
Yeah, he says shit's about to go sideways. So before all that, since you felt like skipping ahead, buddy.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's all right. Basically everybody's kind of pointing fingers at who poisoned Michael, and Michael believes that Sawyer did it.
Yeah.
Which doesn't actually make sense to me. It doesn't seem like, Sawyer would want to get Michael off the raft, even though he's been kicked off. Like, I don't think that's how it would go. But anyways, he does that. And so in defending himself, Sawyer points out to everyone on the island that Kate was the criminal. Yeah. So it's officially out there, and everybody knows that Kate was the person that was there with the marshal.
Which was very interesting to me with Sawyer, because, like, he had formed this kind of almost uneasy alliance, if you will, with Kate, or at least.
But if you remember earlier in the episode, she looks him right in the face, and she says, "I'm getting your spot on the raft."
Yeah, that's
like,
right.
She effectively threatens him, and if there's one thing that you've seen about Sawyer at this point, is that he will not respond well to that. Like, he will defend himself.
Michael just told me you were jockeying for my spot on the raft.
I was just asking some questions. You must have misunderstood me.
I know what you're doing.
Yeah?
Yeah. Just like I know why you wanted that Halliburton case so bad. The one that belonged to the U.S. Marshal who was flying with us? You were his prisoner.
Let go of me.
The only chance of running's getting on that raft, ain't it? We get picked up by a ship, and they come back to rescue the rest of y'all. Gonna be a nice big asterisk next to your name. Don't worry, Puddin'. Your secret's safe with me. But just so you know, no way in hell you're getting my spot on that raft.
Hey, Sawyer. I want your spot. I'll get your spot.
Yeah, he cornered animal. Sawyer is not good.
Mm-hmm. And so now we jump back to our flashback for the last part of our flashback, and where Tom gets Kate in to see her mom, and when her mom sees her, it's not a happy reunion.
No.
Her mom immediately starts screaming for help, and Kate tries to run, has to knock out a cop, bumps into Tom.
Now, I will give you my theory that I brought up earlier that I said I was going to wait until you got later on in the episode. I think Kate killed her father.
Kate killed her own father?
Yes. And I'll tell you why.
All right.
Because of some sort of abuse going on at home. Okay, so what leads me to this is, one, the way the mom reacts to seeing her daughter. Yeah, granted, she's got some I think they said she had cancer.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
maybe
Like
she's got some
and she looks
dementia.
unwell. Like when you see her,
Yeah.
she looks very unwell.
But just the help me, like the way she reacted to seeing her daughter when she was in such dire straits, you'd want to think that no matter what your kid had done, when you're on your deathbed, you'd be so happy to see them, right? Okay.
Mhm.
When they're listening to the tape,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things she says is on the tape is he says, "Oh, we're gonna have the babies and do this and that," and she says, "No, I don't want to stay here for all that." She makes allusions to she just wants to like take off
Mm-hmm.
and leave even then, and there was something like she couldn't do something because of the way her situation is at home, and he knows about it.
Mm-hmm.
And his reaction to her, even though at this point we know she's on the run, we know she's a criminal, even as oldest friends, he's very much willing to put his job on the line for her.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's, like the ethics board with like he would be brought up on charges. He could lose his license or have his suspensions. Like there's all sorts of shit that he's facing now.
Oh yeah,
as a doctor for aiding and abetting her. And so, to wit, my theory is that the person that Kate got sent on the run for in the first place was for killing her own father. Maybe he was abusing her. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll write that down.
Put it in the file.
Yeah. Put it in the square bin right next to my desk.
Fine. All right.
Kevin, you literally, Kevin, I don't know what you do for a living, but you really should be like a forensic, detective, because you give nothing up. I'm so proud of you for you being able to listening to our bullshit, probably totally wrong ideas of what's happening. I just want to give you credit. I want to give you credit because I know that I couldn't do it. There's not a chance.
Well, what's really interesting too is to see that like you guys are watching this without the message boards, without the history, without the whatever. And by this time in the show, when it was on and being watched by millions of people at a time, like the prevailing theory was that this is purgatory. The prevailing theory was that, or the other theories were this is, in their heads. This is,
MK Ultra.
An experiment of some kind, like somebody was supervising these people. As a matter of fact, there's a show that came out last year, I think it was on Amazon Prime, where a plane full of girls crash lands on an island.
Oh yeah, it was. I wanted to see that because
it's okay.
I know
it's okay.
Was
it's
it okay?
Not great, but it's okay.
It looked interesting because it looked like they were going to do flashbacks and they're on the islands.
Sort of, and you find out that they're being watched, right? And so
not going to get a second season, you don't think?
No, I believe that it is getting a second season for a very specific reason in the finale. So if you watch it,
okay,
you will know exactly where they're going to go with the second season. But it's interesting. Not a great show, but not terrible either. Like it's watchable. But the same idea, right? Like, oh, is somebody doing this to these people? Are they being, whatever? So it's fun to see you guys come up with theories that kind of parallel these theories that happened a long time ago. It's also interesting to hear the things that people come up with 15 more years experience in, television land too, right? Like so many shows have either tried to copy the Lost formula or do things that Lost did. So you've seen other shows that are doing, similar things. So yeah, it's cool. It's fun for me. That's why it makes it easy for me to keep this stuff to myself, because if I gave anything away, you guys wouldn't have any more dumbass theories, like or on the mark theories. Like you guys wouldn't be working on theories. You'd be going off what you know, and that's not what
right exactly
thing is about.
If I were you, and if you were to give me some ridiculous idea, I'd be like, yeah, no. I'd be really hard. I could not keep the face that you're keeping. So just congratulations and good job, because it's amazing, because you're keeping all of us intrigued with what's happening. I
It's
dig
good.
it.
It's good. Like I said, that is my goal. That is what I want to keep up. Is that mystery, and watch when something goes sideways and you guys get frustrated by it. Like I was telling Pete before we started recording that I thought it was season 2 that I didn't love, but I was mistaken. I actually really like season 2. It's season 3 where through a good chunk of that season, you could tell there's some issues in the writing room and some things that where maybe they're struggling with the network or whatever. And it's by the end of that season that Lindelof and Cuse went to the network and said, "No, we are ending with 6 seasons. We know where we're going to go. Back the fuck up." And they negotiated with ABC at the time really hard to get an ending, to get a date so that they could write to the ending that they wanted to write to. So I know I was talking about, or there was a group and people were talking about Lost, and somebody said, "Oh, well, they were just making it up as they go along." And I was like, no. You may not like, what they did at the end. Some people like it, some people love it. I'm one of the people that loves it. But it was not just off the cuff. They didn't just run out of time. The network didn't shut them down abruptly. They weren't stretching at that point anymore. From the end of season 3 to the series finale, they knew what they were doing. Like or not, they knew what they were doing. And that's rare for a show back then, especially for a show that was this popular, to be given a real end date, right? For a show that had millions of viewers a week, like tens of millions of viewers a week. For them to come and say, "No, we're good. We know where we're going," was a big deal. So I think we put Pete to sleep. Did he die? Did he fall over?
He's dead.
Oh,
Are we
No,
through?
I'm right here. I'm listening. I'm just I'm dealing with something off on the side. I'm totally I'm
just
in the
pull
moment.
your pants back up and sit down for a couple more minutes. You can finish that later. So anyways, so where we're at in the show, in the current timeline where Kate may or may not have murdered her own father. She bumps into Tom in the hallway and says she needs his keys. And while he gives her the keys, he has this crazy idea to jump into the car with her, and try and talk her down. And so in that moment, they're trying to escape the parking garage. And when they get to the bottom of the parking garage, there's a cop out there. And so she repeatedly asks him to get out of the car. She doesn't want him to be any part of this. He refuses, so she guns it and drives straight at the cop and fires on them, seemingly missing her. And she takes off and gets away. And sure enough, when she gets to a place, I think she drives off the road or hits something. And she looks over, and there is her childhood love, is shot through the chest by the cop from before and is dead. And the last thing we see, she looks in the back seat. There's the airplane. There's all the stuff from the time capsule, and she jumps out of the car and runs away. And that is the last we see of the Kate flashback in the episode titled "Born to Run," where Kate is running away. And now back in our, go ahead.
You just said something that I don't know if it was on purpose or by accident. And I know that you won't share one way or the other, but you said seemingly missing her, which now all I'm thinking about is perhaps in her mind it missed her, but in reality that is her death, and that we will find out somewhere perhaps in season 6 when this ends that is her death.
But we know she's not dead because we already know that her previous flashback when she was with the bank robbery gang was to get the airplane that was just dug up from the ground with her right here.
No, we don't. That's what we've seen. We don't know if that's true.
So Kate's a ghost?
Dude, we have a kid who's drawing things that happen. All this could be fake.
It's a simulation. No, I can see where you're going with that. I'm intrigued. I'm very looking forward to the next 3 episodes.
All I'm saying is anything that Kevin says, I pay attention to probably too much, because he knows everything that we don't. And as smart as he is, and he's a smart motherfucker, I just look for him to trip up.
On that note, I think I'm going to ask.
No, you're not.
This
Hold on one second. We haven't finished the episode, you son of a bitch. So back in our regular timeline, after Kate comes out about being the criminal, Michael gives the spot back to Sawyer. So now we're back to our original crew of Walt, Michael, and Sawyer, and Jin being on the raft. And so after a minute, we see Jack walk up to Sun, and he kind of points out to her that, he knows it was her that poisoned him, and why that all makes sense, and says not to tell anybody, or it says he's not going to tell anybody. So it's kind of a nice moment where
it is, and it's also a smart assumption on Jack's part, because realistically, Sawyer, we've seen from the myopia, even if he knows the names of drugs or what something is, what was Sawyer going to give Michael that would have made him sick? Like, who else legitimately could have poisoned him to just make him sick but not kill him?
Right. And who understood the medicine well enough,
and Sun has already kind of shown that she has some sort of knowledge of that, like what she was doing with the with the skincare. And granted, it's like aloe and things like that, but she was aware. Like Sun she's in some ways, if you look at what was going on with Boone, she's almost kind of acted as his de facto nurse in some situations.
Yeah.
And she has, like, it almost seems like she has a little, even if it's homeopathic medicine, she's got some sort of medical knowledge somewhere of something. Like, she's in tune with that. And you're right. I think this is what leads us into that moment that I found really sweet with Walt.
Right at the very end.
Right here,
where it leads into that, and then Walt is also like, "No, we're the fuck out of here."
Yeah,
he's like, "Put me on this boat. Let's go." And then the very last thing we see on the episode is Sun and Kate talking, and it turns out, you get an idea of just how shady Kate can be, because she's actually the one that kind of talked Sun into poisoning Jin.
Yeah.
She, you can picture, it doesn't show up, but you can picture her just being like, well, I mean, if he got sick, he wouldn't have to go, right? Nudge, nudge, and so, you get that shady bit of Kate right there at the end of the episode, right before we go into the 3-episode season finale.
Again, it just that little bit of information really does, like, and maybe she didn't kill her father, but there's Kate's, like, whatever the event was that set her on the run in the first place, that would make her mother react like that. I'm very interested to find out what it is. They're being very guarded,
cagey,
with Kate's, like, backstory and why she was on the run in the first place. Like, Jack, we've got this mystery about, okay, so he was married, and maybe that's going to, when we get some more on that story and see what's going there, will inform us a little bit more as to who Jack is and why he is the way he is. But at the same time, we already know why Jack was on the island. We know Jack's, like, the core backstory for Jack at that point, just everything with his dad and everything else. But it's like, but then we've got the wife episode, so it's like, okay, there's going to be more there, and it just, there's more to Kate. Like, each time something happens, you're like, okay, Kate's done this. There's more to Kate that I think once we finally find out some more of her backstory, it's not just years on the run manipulating people. That's a very, like, that's a deviousness that we haven't really seen from Kate yet. Like, I guess you could argue in some ways, like, drugging of Jack, yes, but not really, because she just slipped him a sleeping pill.
And that was out of kindness, right? Like, that was literally to take care of Jack. She wasn't getting anything out of that, at least that we saw. There was nothing. Yeah. Like, we saw the key, but she didn't get the key, because, like, I remember watching that, and my first go to thought was that Kate got the key,
Oh yeah,
and
I thought the
and
same
she
thing.
didn't,
Yeah.
and she didn't. At least as far as we know, she did not get the key. She didn't take any guns. The only person that did it was Shannon.
So far, everything that Kate's done has had a positive reason. She has not, as much as she's been the only villain on the island, right? She's the only one that been on the plane in handcuffs, even though Sawyer is clearly a bad guy, like in proved over 10 times. Kate is the only person who has been locked up, so to speak, but yet her crimes, maybe albeit passion, like everything that she's done has not been necessarily
I think
bad.
this was the one thing that she potentially did for herself, because she wants to get off that island. When she burned that ID, it was
She
her
wanted
one
just the
chance to
picture.
get out and pretend
Yeah.
to be somebody else. Because if they get rescued and people come and find her, they're going to know who
Sure.
she is. They're going to figure out who she is.
That's
But if
that's
she
the only
bolts,
it's
yeah,
the only selfish thing she's done.
Mhm.
Everything in all the flashbacks, none of it's really been that evil. I mean, none of it's been good, but it's not been for self gain. It's been for
Again, I'd like to go back to the bank robbery episode where she shot 4 men so she could get her hands on a toy plane.
but the only reason she shot them is because they were going to kill the bank manager.
True dat.
yeah.
I digest.
It wasn't for, again, I mean, maybe for self gain for the airplane, but it wasn't for wealth. It was for a plane, and it was to protect people who are innocent. She hasn't done, in my mind, anything she's shown so far has not been anything in some evil capacity so far.
Yeah, she does not ever come across as evil, although this one thing that she was doing was obviously very self-serving.
I
So-
also don't know where she gets any of her tracking abilities, because besides the lock, she apparently is well. I mean, I can track an animal, and I've been doing that since I was about 20 years old. But she's got some skills that are better than mine, and she's just some chick.
Yeah, but she used to go in the woods with her Army Ranger dad.
For how long though? I don't know. Good for her.
Until she killed him.
Go ahead.
Killed an Army Ranger.
Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, that's probably what happened.
Kevin.
So yeah, so now we are caught up. We are ready for the 3-part season finale of season 1. And I can tell you these next 3 episodes have some very cool stuff. There's a few moments in here that I really love. So it'll be fun for you guys to see those.
Yes, I'm so looking forward to it. I'm literally going to be watching all 3 of them. I'll probably do what I did this time. We wind up watching them over again. Because what winds up happening is it's like so hard to keep the 9-year-old from wanting to watch further on, that what we do is we're going to watch the next 3 episodes first thing tomorrow morning, and then we'll rewatch them later in the week. Because I'm like, okay, you can watch any episodes that we've already watched. And she seems good with that, so I'll take that. I'm looking forward to these 3.
I can't wait.